बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम।
अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मदिन व आलि मुहम्मद। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मदिन व आलि मुहम्मद। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मदिन व आलि मुहम्मद। बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। अल्लाहुम्मा इन्नी अस्अलुका व तवज्जहु इलैका बिनबिय्यिका नबिय्यिर रहमा मुहम्मदिन सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि व आलिहि या अबुल कासिम या रसूलल्लाह या इमाम रहमत या शफ़ी अल उम्मा या सय्यदना व मौलाना इन्ना तवज्जहना वस्तशफ़ाना व तवस्सलना बिका इलल्लाह व क़द्दमनाका बैन यदै हाजातिना या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या अबल हसन या अमीर अलमुमिनीन या अली इब्न अबी तालिब या हुज्जत अल्लाह अला खल्क़िह या सय्यदना व मौलाना इन्ना तवज्जहना वस्तशफ़अना व तवस्सलना बिका इलल्लाह व क़द्दमनाका बैन यदै हाजातिना या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या फ़ातिमत ज़हरा या बिन्त मुहम्मद या क़ुर्रत ऐनिर रसूल या सय्यदतना व मौलातना इन्ना तवज्जहना वस्तशफ़अना व तवस्सलना बिका इलल्लाह व क़द्दमनाका बैन यदै हाजातिना या वजीहतान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या वजीहतान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या अबा मुहम्मदिन या हसन इब्न अली या अय्युहल मुज्तबा या इब्न रसूलिल्लाह या हुज्जतल्लाहि अला खल्क़िही या सय्यदना व मौलाना इन्ना तवज्जहना वस्तशफ़अना व तवस्सलना बिका इलल्लाह व क़द्दमनाका बैन यदै हाजातिना या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या अबा अब्दिल्लाह या हुसैन इब्न अली अय्युहा शहीद या इब्न रसूलिल्लाह या हुज्जतल्लाहि अला खल्क़िह या सय्यदना व मौलाना इन्ना तवज्जहना वस्तशफ़अना व तवस्सलना बिका इलल्लाहि व क़द्दमनाका बैन यदै हाजातिना या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या अबल हसन या अली इब्न अल हुसैन या ज़ैनल आबिदीन या इब्न रसूलिल्लाह या हुज्जतल्लाहि अला खल्क़िही या सय्यदना व मौलाना इन्ना तवज्जहना वस्तशफ़अना व तवस्सलना बिका इलल्लाहि व क़द्दमनाका बैन यदै हाजातिना या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या अबा जाफ़र या मुहम्मद इब्न अली अय्युहल बाकिर या इब्न रसूलिल्लाह या हुज्जतल्लाहि अला खल्क़िही या सय्यदना व मौलाना इन्ना तवज्जहना वस्तशफ़अना व तवस्सलना बिका इलल्लाहि व क़द्दमनाका बैन यदै हाजातिना या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या वजीहान इंदल्लाह इशफ़अ लना इंदल्लाह या अबा अब्दिल्लाह या जाफ़र इब्न मुहम्मद अय्युहा सादिक़ या इब्न रसूलिल्लाह या हुज्जतल्लाहि अला खल्क़िही या सय्यदना व मौलाना इन्ना तवज्जहना वस्तशफ़अना وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا إبراهيم يا موسى بن جعفر أيها القاسم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي الأسقري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وسي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for joining us in our fourth in our series of discussions around the Seerah of the Ahlul Bayt, the biographies of the Ahlul Bayt. Our purpose of having these discussions, and specifically having them on Tuesday nights, is to improve our knowledge and understanding of who the Ahlul Bayt are. Why? Because this dua of tawassul that's associated with Tuesday nights, this dua of tawassul, that's the dua of seeking intercession with Allah. Intercession is done through someone because they have a special standing with Allah. When we discuss the biographies of these personalities, we learn why they're special with Allah, as well as build a deeper connection with this person ourselves, so that when we ask them for assistance, we have a ma'rifah, we have a knowledge of who we're speaking to, and thus improving and increasing our connection with that person, and as such, increasing our connection with Allah through the attachment to this individual. The discussion that we've been having follows around the history of our Holy Prophet. We've talked about the prehistory of the Prophet, meaning before he was born, how we knew that our Prophet was coming. We've talked about his miraculous birth and the unique events that took place in that time. And we've talked about the 40 years leading up to the point where our Prophet is instructed to now announce the religion of Islam to the people of Makkah and to the people of the world. The time at which our Prophet was instructed to introduce this message was a time that we saw was a period of what's known as Jahiliyyah, or ignorance amongst the Arab. It was one of the most ignorant periods in the history of the earth at that point in time. And there were many bad precedences that had been established in society. And it's a very interesting point that comes up, that why was our Prophet instructed to reveal his message in Arabia? You see, many of the prophets, especially the ones who are discussed in the Quran as well too, were revealed in the environment of the Levant, where Ibrahim alayhi salam, where Yaqub, where Yusuf, and all of these people were, that those were areas where the establishment of Nubuwwat and prophethood had already been done, and many Anbiya had done work. But when it comes to our Prophet, he's sent to Hijaz, a place which doesn't have a deep history of Anbiya, and there were very few Anbiya sent to the Arab. And our Prophet goes there, where people haven't had experiences with Nabi Ibrahim, or spent time with Ibrahim, or with Yaqub, or the children of Ishaq, or it's not well known there. There's a discussion that says that why was the Prophet chosen in this place and not in the place of, for example, where Anbiya had a depth of history and people were familiar with the prophets. Some descriptions say that, one, that the people of Arabia, their darkness and their evil and their negative attributes were so much that the light of the Prophet shone brightest in the darkness. So those people who already had monotheistic traditions, for them, the change from their faith to the faith of Rasulullah would not reveal the depth of the impact that the Prophet made in this world, because it would be said, yeah, it's the same religion as the other Anbiya brought before him. This is one argument. Another argument is that the need in Arabia was such that it was the darkest of places, so therefore the brightest of lights was needed there, and that's why Allah sent our Prophet there to change the worst of the people that were there. Another explanation points to the fact that the same way that the other Anbiya from the Levant regions, their impact never reached Arabia, because the Arabian people had this stubborn nature where they wouldn't accept concepts and ideas from outside. And if Allah wanted to establish the religion of Islam in these people, it would be because it came from amongst these people. The variety of explanations of why the wisdom was that our Prophet was revealed in the land of Arabia and not somewhere else is a subject of debate, and we can find many benefits, but at the end of the day, the correct answer is that Allah chose to send our Prophet to this land, therefore that's the right solution. There's no better solution than that. We can try to understand the wisdom behind it, But its reality is with Allah, and Allah has dictated that our Prophet would be sent to the land of Arabia and to the worst of places and the worst of times to bring reformation, to bring change to society, and to change these people from all of the evil and backwardsness that existed amongst them and bring them towards Allah and monotheism. We see that our Prophet, when he receives the revelation in Ghar Hira, the first of these revelations, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, recite in the name of your Lord who created. These verses have a very interesting discussion about the fact of association, that as Allah talks about the creation of man, he talks about imbibing them with knowledge, of supporting them with knowledge and giving them knowledge. And the significance of the purpose of man and the pursuit of knowledge in the eyes of Islam is a very deep relationship, which is why when we look at the significance of these verses, we see Allah pointing us to that religion should bring us to knowledge, should bring us back to Allah. And therefore, those are the first verses revealed to our Holy Prophet to bring into society. Now, the Prophet spent 13 years in the city of Mecca after the revelation was introduced to him. The first 3 of these years, our Prophet was instructed to only reveal the message to his close family and close friends, and not to announce it yet to society at large, which is why we saw that the number of converts in this period of time is maybe 40 people or so, approximately, according to some historians as they analyze, including, for example, Bibi Khadija, who was the first lady to believe in the religion of Islam. Imam Ali, who accepted the religion of Islam at the age of 10 and was the first male to believe in the religion of Islam. There is Zayd ibn Harith, who was a servant in the house of Rasulullah. Salman Farsi. These were all people that had accepted in the very early phases of Islam. The history of this even points to the fact that there are some narrations that point to the uncle, Abbas, of the Holy Prophet, where a narration comes from him that a traveler came and saw 3 people standing in front of the Kaaba and praying, and asked Hazrat Abbas, who are these 3 people and what are they doing? And Hazrat Abbas replies, he says, this is my nephew, Rasulullah, his wife, Khadija, and his cousin, Ali, and they are praying to Allah, pointing to that we have some narrations, authentic narrations from the very advent of Islam in these first 3 years where it wasn't publicly announced, that our Prophet would pray and that Imam Ali and Bibi Khadija were the only people who would be praying with him, showing where the advent of Islam came from and who are those that were the supporters of the Holy Prophet. After these first 3 years, where only a few people, a handful of people who were closely related to or had proximity to, relationship, friendship with the Holy Prophet learned about the religion, after this period is when our Prophet was instructed to announce to the public at large of Mecca about the religion of Islam. Now, it's important to understand, in these first 3 years, it's not that people didn't know that Islam exists. They had never been invited to it. They heard about it, as the Prophet would be making his mention, but it was seen as that this is something selective only for him and a few people. It wasn't seen as an invitation to society at large, which is why the Quraysh in the first 3 years didn't really persecute the Prophet. They were just like, he's doing his own thing. We won't really get involved. He's not getting involved with us. We're not going to get involved with him. He's only talking to, like a few people here and there and doing it kind of like almost like a select club. So they left him alone and they didn't bother him. But after 3 years, when Allah told him, now invite your family and invite the people. So this is when, after 3 years, is when Da'wat-e-Dhul Ashira comes, the feast of the family, in which we famously note that the Holy Prophet told Imam Ali to go and invite all of the children of Abdul Muttalib to come to a dinner. And approximately 40 members of the family came. And on the first night, the Prophet had a little bit of food in front of him, which normally would have sufficed for one person. And from this food for one person, the Prophet fed all 40 of his family members. Amongst these family members were, for example, Hazrat Hamza, Hazrat Abu Talib, Hazrat Abbas, and Abu Lahab. And famously, at the end of this meal, our Prophet stood up to go and speak to the family and say something. But before he could, Abu Lahab stood up and said, Muhammad has committed a great miracle here, or great service, great magic for us, and fed us all by food that was sufficient for one person. So thank you very much. And he left and took everybody with him. And the Prophet didn't get to make his announcement to the family at large. Famously, the second night this happens, and again, he stopped from making the message. The third night, the Prophet stands up and he says, I have been instructed to invite you to the religion of Allah, to believe in one God, to follow his instructions, and to establish his religion on this earth. Who amongst you will support me? And from amongst the children of Abdul Muttalib, nobody answered. Amongst these 40 members of the family, no one answered, except for Imam Ali, who had a boy of 13, stood up and said, I will be your supporter. Now, this event is noted in history universally because they made jokes about it. That when Imam Ali stood up at 13 and he said, I'll be your supporter. And the Prophet said that this is now my inheritor, my successor, my brother, my legatee, the one who will lead this nation after me. The other members of the tribe turned to Abu Talib and laughed at him and said, ha ha ha, now you have to listen to your son. You have to listen to your little boy. Because of that making fun, everybody narrated this event and said that this man who's introducing a religion has made his own cousin, who's a 13-year-old boy, his legatee, and that's his successor. And so meaning the enunciation of Islam and introduction to Islam in society also made the enunciation of the successorship of the Prophet and who his supporter, successor, and who his aide in this entire affair would be was none other than Imam Ali from this very moment. The family didn't really support him very much, and the consequence of it was our Prophet began the process of preaching to the public after this, in which famously he climbs one of the mountains, because Makkah is a valley, climbs the mountain of Abu Qubais, stands upon the mountain of Abu Qubais and calls all of the people of Makkah to him. He says, all people of Makkah, come to me, and listen to me. And this is a very famous narration in which our Prophet stands on this mountain and says to the people, he says, oh people, if I told you there was an army coming from behind this mountain to attack us, would you believe me? And all the people of Makkah said, yeah, certainly we would believe you. You're as-sadiq al-amin. You are the truthful one. You are the trustworthy. We believe you. We trust you. We know you. And sure enough, when he said this, he then turned and said to the people, he said that I'm telling you that there is a God who has created you and has instructed me to educate you about the religion of Islam. And I'm inviting you to follow the religion of Allah. And this is where Abu Lahab now criticizes and attacks the Holy Prophet. And he says that you're a liar, get out of here, and abuses the Holy Prophet. This started the process of introducing the people of Makkah to the religion of Islam. And during this next period of approximately 3 to 4 years, our Prophet goes through the effort of introducing the people of Makkah to Islam, and the people of Makkah, in turn, some accept, a few do accept, but more so the persecution of our Holy Prophet begins, and the abuse to our Holy Prophet begins. Now, understand something. They were willing to persecute the Holy Prophet, but they couldn't kill him. They couldn't end his life. They couldn't assassinate him, and they couldn't kick him out. Why? Because of Abu Talib. Abu Talib's great status within all of the Quraysh was such, and Abu Talib extended his support to the Holy Prophet in such a way that he said the Prophet Muhammad can do anything he wants to, and no one can touch him as long as Abu Talib is alive, and no one will bother him. So therefore, our Prophet, they couldn't kill him, so what they did was they abused him as much as they could. And you hear the stories of, for example, the children on the streets bothering the Holy Prophet. You hear the examples of garbage being thrown at him. You hear, for example, the abuses that were done to him. It was all during this period of approximately 4 years. But they couldn't do anything to him to hurt him. So what did they do instead? They persecuted his followers. During this time, we famously see that the first shuhada, the first martyrs for the religion of Islam, are Yasir and his wife Sumayya. Yasir and Sumayya, being from amongst the lower classes of society, but believers in the religion of Islam, were eventually captured by the Quraysh and tortured and killed for their belief in the religion of Islam. Their son is very famously Ammar ibn Yasir, and Ammar, being the child of these two, is also one of the adherent followers of the Ahlul Bayt and lovers of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and one of the supporters of the true message of Islam. Because of this assassination of Ammar's parents, Yasir and his wife Sumayya, the Prophet takes a group of these people and gives them instruction to migrate from the city of Makkah to Abyssinia, which is a Christian kingdom where there will be safety. Famously, there are 2 migrations that take place. The first is 15 people who go to Abyssinia, and shortly thereafter, approximately 80 to 85 people who go to Abyssinia in a short period of time after them. And this second migration is led by Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the brother of Imam Ali. When this delegation reaches, and 85 people leave the city of Makkah, and that's a notable number, the Quraysh become frightened that, oh no, that maybe this Islam will take a foothold and Christianity will support them and they'll come back and they'll attack us for being polytheists. Remember, they remember the event of Amul Fil, and Abraha's army was a Christian army. And here the Muslims are again leaving the polytheist environment and going and seeking support with the Christians. So what do the Meccans do? They immediately send a delegation to Negus, the king of Abyssinia, and tell him, send these Muslims back, excommunicate them. They're our enemies, you can't keep them. And Ja'far eloquently explains to the Christian king, why are we the enemies of the polytheists? It's because we believe in one God. We refuse idol worship. And we believe in the authority and the prophethood of Nabi Isa. And the Abyssinian king, hearing all these statements, says the Muslims are welcome here, they're safe here, and we will not extradite them to you back into Makkah to persecute them further. So the persecution keeps building for this period of 4 years. At the end of the 6th year, as the Muslims are being persecuted, the Quraysh realize that in spite of this persecution, people won't leave the Prophet. They keep converting to this religion. So they come together and they plan a boycott. And they say that the children of Abdul Muttalib, the children of Hashim, we will boycott these two clans and kick them out of Makkah. We will not marry from them. We will not buy to them. We will not sell to them. And sure enough, the consequence of this is what starts the persecution of 3 years of the boycott against the Banu Hashim and the Banu Abdul Muttalib, which forces them to leave Makkah and move to what's called Sheikh Abi Talib. Sheikh Abi Talib was a valley next to a mountain that was a little bit outside of Makkah. And the Prophet, his supporters, and the children of Hashim and Abdul Muttalib are forced to live in this environment where they said there were approximately 40 or 50 adults who were sent here, and then a number of children. And it was forbidden to sell them anything, and it was forbidden to buy anything from them, and it was forbidden to marry into these families. For a period of 3 years, they faced this persecution. And what they did was they wrote a missive, and they wrote the boycott up properly, and they posted it to the side of the Kaaba, and that was considered official law for the Quraysh, that none of the Quraysh could violate anything that had been posted on the Kaaba. In this period of 3 years, there was a lot of danger and persecution. And when we talk about the danger and persecution, we talk about that this was the most difficult time on the Holy Prophet, where the Prophet says, I have been persecuted like no one else. There have been phases of my life that the Prophet would describe during this boycott, where I had nothing to eat but the leaves on trees, and that they were so abused in this period of time that their lives were in danger. There would be only 2 times a year that they could potentially go out and buy and sell something and get some food, and that was in the months of Rajab and Dhul Hijjah. And the reason that it was these 2 months was that even amongst the Arabs, polytheistic Arab, in these 2 months, any type of war, fighting, abuse was forbidden amongst the Arab. Until today, that tradition continues, that in the Shahr al-Haram, the forbidden months, Rajab and Dhul Hijjah are still included amongst those as months forbidden for fighting. Outside of that, they weren't allowed to go and purchase anything. And the danger even in this Sheikh Abi Talib was so great that it's narrated and said that every night the Prophet would sleep on his bed, and Abu Talib would come and wake him up and move him to another bed and move one of his own sons to the bed of the Holy Prophet to protect the life of the Holy Prophet. And this wasn't something done once or twice, but it's believed that this was done for a period of 3 years, that the Prophet's life was in so much danger that he was constantly being shifted from bed to bed, and the children and the brothers of Abu Talib would sleep on that bed to protect the life of the Holy Prophet for fear of his assassination in the middle of the night. It was the wealth of Sayyidah Khadija and the protection of Abu Talib that kept the religion of Islam alive through this period of 3 difficult years. Near the end of the 3 years, 2 interesting things happen. One is that the Prophet turns to Abu Talib and he says to him, he says, "Oh, Abu Talib, that treaty that they wrote against us, that boycott that they wrote against us, Allah has instructed me that the insects have eaten the entirety of the treaty except for the name of Allah. So there is no more boycott remaining with them, and they can't enforce that document." So Abu Talib, listening to this from the Holy Prophet and believing the words of the Holy Prophet, enters the city of Makkah. When he enters the city of Makkah and goes to the precincts of the Kaaba and stands by the Kaaba, he finds that the Quraysh are already gathered and having a very hot debate. And the very hot debate was a few of the people of the Quraysh who were relatives of the Banu Hashim and Banu Abdul Muttalib were fighting against the rest of the Quraysh and saying that this boycott is illegal, stop this boycott right now. And they would say, we can hear the children crying from hunger every day, and we want this boycott to stop, and you can't boycott these families. They are our relatives as well too. We refuse to have this boycott continue. In the middle of this debate, when Abu Talib walks in, the rest of the Quraysh say, wait, we're going to stop arguing amongst ourselves. Maybe Abu Talib has come to give up and turn Prophet Muhammad over to us. So they wait and they see, what does Abu Talib have to say? Abu Talib enters this meeting and he says to them that my nephew, the Prophet, has told me that your boycott that you wrote against us has been eaten by insects except for the name of Allah, and that nothing remains of it. If he is telling the truth, then this boycott ends now because the document doesn't exist anymore. There is no boycott against us. And he says, and they said, well, how do we know he's telling us the truth? So Abu Talib makes a statement. He says, if my nephew is wrong, then I will turn him over to you and we are done with this. We won't do anything else. So sure enough, they went back to the precincts of the Kaaba where they stored all these scrolls and documents, and they pulled out the document that they had initially posted to the side of the Kaaba, and they looked at it. And the entirety of the document had been eaten by insects except for the name of Allah. When they saw this, Abu Talib stood up, and the families of the Quraysh who were defending the Banu Hashim stood up and said, now there is no more boycott because the document itself does not exist. And our Prophet and the Muslims and the tribes of Banu Hashim and Banu Abdul Muttalib were welcomed back into the city of Mecca. This took place in the year 10 after the Annunciation of the Holy Prophet, 3 years before the event of Hijrah. And when they enter back into the city of Mecca, now situations begin to reestablish, and that extreme poverty and persecution slows down for a minute. But 9 months after they come back and this boycott ends, Hazrat Abu Talib passes away. And very short period of time after him, Bibi Khadija passes away. These two, who are supporters of the Holy Prophet, their loss to the Holy Prophet is why this year is known as Amul Huzn, the year of sorrow and sadness for our Holy Prophet. And it is one of the years that is well documented that in the history of Islam, there exists something called Amul Huzn that every Muslim recognizes. And when you ask, why is it known as Amul Huzn? It's known as Amul Huzn because of the death of these two great personalities who helped to establish and protect the religion of Islam. Amul Huzn also marks a turning point in the spreading of the message of Islam. Losing the financial backing of Sayyidah Khadija, losing the security of Hazrat Abu Talib, increased the chances of persecution and abuse against our Holy Prophet, as well as the fact that the Quraysh no longer had to give him any kind of significance or any kind of value to allow him to be safe in the city of Mecca. As a consequence, we see that in the year 11, after the Annunciation of the message, our Prophet goes to a city nearby, right outside of Mecca, called Ta'if. And in Ta'if, he preaches the message of Islam for 1 month and receives nothing but abuse. And he is attacked so badly that they said our Prophet had to leave that city bleeding and went unconscious because of the wounds that he had received from the people attacking him in that place. When he comes back from Ta'if, it is difficult for him to enter back into the city because the Quraysh are like, we don't want him back here. But our Prophet, alhamdulillah, by the support of some of his relatives, comes back into the city of Mecca. During this period of the next 2 to 3 years, the message of Islam is so persecuted in the city of Mecca that most of the Meccans won't listen to and don't give the Prophet the opportunity to speak to them. So our Prophet actually winds up preaching to people who would come to Mecca as pilgrims. And people outside of the city of Mecca now start hearing the message of Islam. And they start learning about this religion from our Holy Prophet and going back to their towns and their tribes and discussing and teaching their people about what our Prophet is preaching. One of the famous ones, and this is Abu Dhar al-Ghaffari, that Abu Dhar comes and he hears this message and he goes back to the tribe of Ghaffar and announces to them, and half of the tribe of Ghaffar accepts the religion of Islam because of what Abu Dhar tells them about the Holy Prophet. During this time is also a group of people who come from Yathrib, initially 6 people in the year approximately 620, come and they listen to what the Prophet has to say, and 6 people accept the message of Islam. Then they go back to their town. The next year when they come for Hijrah, they bring 12 people, or 6 additional people. And now 12 people at the hands of the Prophet accept the religion of Islam and make an agreement with the Holy Prophet that's known as the Treaty of Aqaba. This was a location right outside of the area of Mecca because Mecca wasn't safe for them to declare this. And they say that we will follow the edicts of Islam, we will not do the actions of Jahiliyyah, and we will believe in your faith in its entirety. And these 12 people go and they're making the invitation that, hey, we're going to accept Islam. And the Prophet says, first, let me see if you actually practice the religion of Islam, and sends them back to the city of Yathrib. The year after that, in 622, these 12 people come back again in their migration to the city of Mecca, but this time, they're not 12 of them, there's 70 of them. And there's 17 Muslimin who come to the Holy Prophet and say that we are following your religion. We renew our oath to you that we will practice this religion, and we invite you to our city. Now, here's the significance of this. In the first 13 years in the message of Islam, there are not more than 300 people approximately who accepted the religion of Islam. Let's do some of the math. The first 3 years when the Prophet only invited his family, there were maybe 40 people. The next 4 years when there was persecution, about 100 people accepted and migrated to Abyssinia. And then after that, during the period of the boycott, maybe about 150 people were Muslim. And now another 70 to 100 people, plus those who were outside, accepted the religion of Islam, to where there's about 200 to maybe 300 people who are Muslims, 100 of whom are in Abyssinia already seeking refuge with the Christian king. And now you have 70 Muslims in the city of Yathrib who are saying, Ya Rasulullah, we will make a safe place for you. Come to our city. And this begins the process of now that Yathrib is going to become the place of the capital of Islam, and the Prophet is planning to migrate to that city. When the Quraysh learn that such a big constituency and such a big group of people are accepting Islam, and that people outside of Makkah are now converting to the religion of Islam, they have a conversation amongst themselves that we couldn't contain this prophet in our own city, and his message is beginning to spread. Now what do we do? And this is where they come up with the plan for the collective assassination of the Holy Prophet, where famously they gather together and they come up with plans on what to do. And first they decide that, okay, we'll boycott him. And then it was, well, that didn't work last time, it won't work again. Then it was, let's put him in prison and lock him in a cell. And the answer was, well, he can still preach to people, and how long can you keep him in that cell? Eventually he'll be forced to be released. To where they come up with the plan, we can kill him. But the problem was, they were like, if one of us kills him, then they'll be answerable to the Banu Abdul Muttalib and the Banu Hashim, who are part of the Quraysh, that we will have to pay blood money to them. So they come to the conclusion that if all of the tribes of the Quraysh send someone, then the Banu Hashim and Banu Abdul Muttalib won't be able to stand against all of our tribes. And this becomes the plan and the plot by which that they intend to kill the Holy Prophet. We'll continue our discussion around the story of the Holy Prophet next week, inshallah, and talk more about the life of our Holy Prophet and the wonderful things that he did, and learn about the beauty of the message of Islam, and learn our own history, so that when we recite this Dua-e-Tawassul on Tuesday nights, and we ask for the Shifa of the Holy Prophet, we recognize how great were his sacrifices, how hard did he work to protect this message of Islam, and how fortunate we are to have someone like Rasulullah to be a mercy for us, and to acknowledge us as part of his nation, and to ask Allah to have mercy on us in this world and the hereafter. We end our discussion, inshallah, by remembering all of our forefathers, all of our family members who preserved this religion of Islam for us and gave us the true message of Islam, that we can enact it in our day-to-day life. وآخر دعوانا والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله